Hi, I'm Gretchen Burns Bergman, co-founder and executive director of A New Path, Parents for Addiction Treatment and Healing. We advocate for therapeutic rather than punitive drug policies, and we work to reduce the stigma associated with drug use and substance use disorders. I'm also the lead organizer of our Moms United to End the War on Drugs campaign in 35 states with partners in 6 countries. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are in the middle of our Moms United global campaign for the month of May. Today is Mother's Day in Mexico. So we are honoring our partners, the mothers of the disappeared who are mourning the loss of their children due to drug war violence. There's a whole activity on Facebook and social media, an art campaign that I hope you'll look into. So today I'm supposed to be joined by my 2 sons. Right now we have one of my sons on, but hopefully Aaron will be on in a few minutes. So Elon Burns is here with me right now. He's my firstborn. A year ago, we kicked off a series of monthly interviews on Mother's Day. And this was the beginning of the pandemic. So I thought this was a good time to reflect on this difficult period, which we're calling the triple crisis of COVID-19, opioid overdose, and systemic racism. So Elon, you're at a point now where you've been in recovery longer, or about the same, but I think a little longer than your active years of using. Briefly, can you tell us about your journey, where you were 20 years ago and how this feels today?
It's interesting that you ask. So you say that you've been clean as long as using, and it is an interesting view because it's a first few years when you get clean, you are asked this question on the interview. It's so easy to just go back and say how different things are from how they're not, because it's just night and day. Like back, I didn't expect to be alive, that's for sure. I was in and out of prison, overdose, that type of stuff. No connection with anybody really, and definitely none with my family, and just lying, deceitful, hurting everybody, and not even consciously aware of the extent how I was hurting everybody, and how I wasn't really part of life. The first few years you clean up and everything gets so different. You become society, you get relationships with your family again, you become a better friend, a better son, a better brother. You get a job. I got a degree, got off parole, which was big at the time. A couple years ago, got to clean up my legal issues, so I have no record anymore, which is a nice thing too. But those things go, and as life goes, I wouldn't trade the worst days sober for the best day high at this point, because it's such a gift to be here, and there's almost a little bit of survivor's remorse, because you always ask why me, and why can't some of these people just get it? Because so many people that are so sharp and could give the world so much just seem to struggle so long and keep risking their lives so long, which I can relate to, but some of them just don't ever make it. But I've been clean long enough to be years and experience the ups and downs of life. Now things that I never thought I would. I figured I'd be dead for life in prison or something, and now I'm out and I have to get older. You monitor regular health stuff, not just OD or getting beat up or having something dangerous happen to you. Now I buried my father this year, and for a couple of years before that, I was there to support him as he got really sick and terminal, which is definitely not one of the joys of life. But I am so grateful I was able to be there for him. I can't imagine if he did that without having a son or any support around. I care more about people and politics and the world in general, which is a double-edged sword, but at least I'm part of it.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, Mother's Day was wonderful yesterday. Thank you to be with both of my sons in long-term recovery. And after so many decades, Aaron gave me a funny card that said something about when you it feels like my only option is to run away. And he says, "I'm so glad you didn't." To me, like the mother didn't run away from them. From all the problems.
No,
But,
if anybody had an excuse to, that's for sure.
right. So I'm going to ask you another question since I still don't have Aaron on.
Well, go ahead, please. I don't ever know how far to go with it. So if you want to,
Yeah,
ask, I'll talk.
yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about your journey. It's interesting that it's Prop 64 that allowed you to expunge your record. So some of the work that I've been doing, and then along the way you've been doing as a board member and New Path, it's pretty gratifying that the bill that I co-signed, I was one of the three signers, actually is what allowed you to get an attorney and expunge your record. So things go full cycle. And for Prop 36, which was my first legislative action that I was involved in 2000, treatment instead of incarceration for nonviolent drug offenders passed. And then later, Aaron got, when he got in trouble, he was offered treatment instead of incarceration. Of course, the double-edged sword to that was by that time there was no funds for treatment. So he basically got nothing, but he didn't get prison either. He didn't get treatment and he didn't get prison. He got state of limbo of sorts. So I think Aaron's going to get on in a minute, but I just got a text, but I'm going to go ahead to ask you another question. During the pandemic, drug deaths have risen, as you know, by 13% due to isolation, depression, but also fentanyl is being laced in just about everything, right? So you've been on the front lines distributing Narcan to people at risk during the pandemic. Can you tell me about this experience? I understand you said something really poignant one day that you saw a friend of yours who came to the syringe exchange and somebody that you had used with and were close friends with, it's still out there. So you just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, the years were not kind to him. If you manage to stay alive, it definitely does havoc to your body and brain. I've been happy to be part of distributing Narcan. I mean, a lot of these laws you're talking about, whether it was Prop 36 or Prop 64, or even the work we did to, humanize the three strikes law, it's like they're so late in coming. So when they just common sense, pragmatically, they make sense about 20 years before they actually happen. And working on it and getting to see them come fruition is a great thing. And something like Narcan that should have been out there a long time ago, because it's such it cannot hurt you. It can only help. It's such a safe thing, and it works to reverse opiate overdoses. It should have been out there a long time ago. And the only reason it isn't is this damn stigma that we can't break, where people, yes, it's a disease. They don't want to believe it's a disease, or they start to say the right things like, yes, we're open. We don't look down on people that suffer from addictive illness, but there's a part of them that still does, because as long as it's not my kid, as long as you don't think it could happen in my neighborhood, why would I ever need to have it around? All these kind of things that keep people from getting it or pushing to have it out there. I know, just on word of mouth, we've got almost, was it 1925 reversals, lives being saved just from what we're doing, and there are other organizations doing it now too. And that's just word of mouth. It's the numbers got to be way greater than that, because a lot of these people aren't reporting when it happens. A lot of people these people aren't going to call us and let us know, oh, thank you, we used your thing and we did it. It's just the ones that do that we can get reports on. We've been doing it for a while, and this COVID thing happens, and then you can't go to many people except for the needle exchange, and you try to be as safe as possible. And you get down there and you realize that people that are involved in their addiction still, that is their main concern. There's no pandemic. They're not worried about catching that. They're worried about how to get well that day. They're worried about staying high. They're not worried if they got a mask on or, what's open or not. They worried about continuing their addiction and oblivious to all the harm that's out around them. And people in that position aren't usually the ones that are going to seek help. Unfortunately, part of the disease is you don't seek it. You want to stay in that. Your brain keeps you in a place where that's the only place to be, and dying is okay somehow, or risking your life is at least okay. And then you take COVID where things are closed down. It just makes them easier for so many addicts out there not to seek help or not, or to have an excuse that they're not able to.
Right.
So I'm glad we were able to at least go to the needle exchange where people are gonna be there and get it to them. So yeah, it's been interesting. Did I answer the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. Yeah. I way back in the beginning when you agreed to be the poster child of this issue. Elon was behind bars at the time that I was state chair of Proposition 36, and I speaking out was something I felt that I had to do as a mother, to kind of break through the stigma and shame that a lot of people were experiencing, but weren't coming forward and saying my child has a drug problem, and worse than that, weren't saying my child not only has a drug problem, but they have a problem with the criminal justice system. But I went to Elon and I asked if I could tell his story. So I've been really, and he had the courage to say yes, if it helps anybody else, go ahead. And I don't think he thought he was going to be a poster boy for life, but it kind of turned out that way. But I've always been so proud because that took courage. But the truth is, it's really an authority question as to when it's my story, when it's your story. And the truth is, it's our story because it's the family thing. And when one of the things that I work so hard is I want family members to continue to embrace this person. He's not a bad person doing bad things. He's a person that got stuck and needs to have a family to come back to, needs to know the love is there and support, to come back to. So anyway, I want to thank you for that. And here comes my other son. Wait a second, you're not quite in yet. Now you're in. Okay.
Now I'm in. Okay.
Yeah. We were just talking about when it's my story, when it's your story, but the fact is that it's our story. It's a family story. And that I'm so grateful that you guys have had the courage and really to speak out with such honesty and grit about your stories. Elon has briefly told his story. What the question that I asked him was that, briefly go back 20 years ago and to today and what feels like a recovery. Your recovery has been amazing to watch. He's over 6 years now in recovery, works as a drug and alcohol counselor, as does Elon. I know that outdoor sports have been really important to your recovery. And during the original shutdown of the pandemic, it was really tough because all the things that were really part of your recovery program were taken away. So it's really good to see you back, snowboarding and surfing and outdoors with your, community of people that support. But take us 10 years ago, a little bit about what was going on then and where you are today.
Okay. Yeah. Well, 10 years ago, of course, I was stuck in the disease. I was when I say stuck in the disease, I don't mean just like stuck using my mind, my soul, everything was stuck in that life. A total disbelief in anything could be anything but that. The scariest part about it is that when you start off using drugs and stuff, you always feel like you somehow have a little bit of control, which is just, it might be true at start, but once it has its claws into me, I started disbelieving that I could do anything, right? Anything outside of that. A normal life didn't seem to exist. Um, and first of all, of course, the lack of belief, the negative thoughts in the head, and then of course all of your activities that that made me, that I enjoyed, went out the window because it just became all addiction. It just became, this is my life. This, whatever's in this little bag, is what controls me and has my life. So getting sober, when I finally came to get sober, begrudgingly, or kicking and screaming as much as I did, it was because the only reason I was having that is because I honestly thought in my core that there was no way that I could ever get back to any kind of real life. There was never going to be a moment in my life in which the obsession of using was going to not overtake my mind and overtake me, because I only had brief periods of any kind of recovery in there. I wouldn't say recovery, any time of like sobriety, which would maybe 30 days, something like that. But and at that time, my mind is still obsessed with the thought of using. So when I got through my first year in sobriety, I kind of plateaued a little bit with meetings and everything, and I was feeling a little so I felt like a stall, like something else was missing. And the funny thing was, it's like I wanted to get back to surfing. I wanted to get back to sports. I wanted to get back to finding more of my spirituality through that. And but I was still with the negative thoughts of my head, saying like I can't get back out there. Like I'm not gonna be as good as I used to be. I'm not, so like I was still imprisoned with my negative thoughts a little bit, and it kept me out of the water a little bit longer. And then but I needed it. I needed it. My life had always gone better when I was surfing and when I was, having more goals for myself, and finding the love for life, the actual love for life. I was loving life at the time, but I wasn't, there's just not enough, I needed more. So I really went back into just trying to find things that meant the most to me. And I literally sat down and I was like, what do I want to do in my life? And one of them was I wanted to be a surfer. I wanted to be back in the water. Another was because the ocean was a big deal to me. It was always a part of my life. And then I wanted to be able to still like snowboard and do the board sports that I enjoyed. And so I started doing that. I started playing softball in the sober softball league. I started chasing a lot of things, and that unfortunately softball was a little hard on the shoulder, and I decided surfing was more important than softball to me at that time. So I stopped softball. But those are the things that kind of pushed me into finding more balance in my life, more balance that I needed. And in my recovery, a big part of it has become, which I never thought was going to be a thing for me, was meditation, yoga, stuff like that. Things that I thought were the fluff of programs, which I thought was no, I'm never going to meditate. No, I'm never going to do guided meditations. But those are things that kind of got to me, and actually have become very paramount in my emotional regulation. I still suffer with some anger issues and stuff like that. So this keeps me kind of on more of an even keel, and these things have opened me up a little bit more spiritually. And I think, and I actually attribute the surfing to me quitting smoking cigarettes, because it didn't line up with what I wanted to be, anymore. So that's kind of what I've been doing with my recovery in the last 10 years. I'm not hearing you.
I can't hear you, Mom.
I think we lost your audio.
Yeah.
Not hearing you. Is there a mute? Well, I mean, in lieu of not having dead air right here, I guess I could talk a little bit more about um, the part that brings me into the spiritual side with the sports is that because I'm out there and being active, and I think it becomes, I talk about it in negative cycles. If you if someone has depression and their first thing is that they want to go and isolate, right? And that's like the worst thing you can have for depression, right? You isolate, you don't hang around people, you don't get outside as much, you don't feel as healthy, you don't get the endorphins going in your brain. It becomes a negative cycle. The positive cycle and having like the sports and having like, the surfing is like you're outside, you get the vitamin D, you start, the sun from the vitamin D helps you with depression, helps you with the anxiety because you learn how to overcome like, basically anything. And then, you get the endorphins, you start feeling better, you start looking better, you start feeling better, you want to do better. So then you start eating better. And then it just becomes a positive cycle that kind of comes into play. That was something that I just needed to do for myself, was complete that cycle a little bit. Are you still muted? Yeah. I can't hear you. Are you in the same house as Elon? Maybe you guys should share cameras.
Want me to bring it down?
Yeah, Elon, I guess she's gonna come up to you now.
Hey.
Hey, so it's
Yes.
the Elon Brothers show. Here. No. And sorry I was late. I was coming onto this program. I remembered this, and then I had 3 sessions back to back to back, and went and got lunch. So I had to run back to the office to do this. So
Gretchen, can you hear us? Do you want me to bring my computer down?
she's coming up there. That's what I read her sign language said. Yeah. So Elon, did I miss your talk? I think I did. Okay, there you are. Can we hear you?
Okay, but you can sit. Go ahead.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
We did this last time.
I
Do you
do.
remember? The last time we couldn't get.
Although at least she let me go to her office where there was room.
Yeah, I can hear you.
You hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Okay. So I have another question for you, and Elon already said this. Well, first, I know it was tough for your clients because of the pandemic, that the Zoom calls. So there's just briefly talk about the difference between being able to see somebody, give them a hug, and versus counseling when you're on Zoom and you can't, really read people's expressions and really support them the way you want
yeah,
to.
it's a good point. For anybody that got sober in the last year, they had to experience a different environment than I got to, which was, absolutely had to be hard for people. Where there's a meeting, where there's a will, there's a way. It was not impossible. But at the same time, community is a big part of this thing. They always say like the opposite of addiction is connection, right? And so getting people to have a connection with people on Zoom meeting is not really easy when you're first starting off. For me, I had like a home group already. I saw the faces in the boxes. I knew them. We chatted, we talked, right? It was a big, a bit easier for me and people that had some time. If you didn't have time, it was really hard. I do have a friend who started up, and she just got a year sober, and all she did know was Zoom meetings. That was how her recovery started. So it was possible, but she had to be a little bit. You had to have a little more oomph in you, I guess, to get it started that way. It was really hard with the. With therapy though, because I mean, when you're not in a room with somebody and you're talking to a room of 8 people in a group, it's really hard to read affect and be able to understand like what people are going through. And being addicts and alcoholics, we're probably goofing off a little bit when we see the chance to, and when like, it's like the common thing when you were in school and there's a substitute teacher, people goofed off a little bit more than they would have. but yeah, I definitely know it's a struggle for people because of community. Community is such a huge part of my recovery. I think when I first came into recovery, I was going to the rooms that I didn't identify in, right? I didn't feel like I belonged in. I didn't see, of course, everybody has that where they look for the differences instead of the, commonality of addiction. But there is your tribe, right? You will find the people because there's so many different meetings, and I encourage people to do that. But on Zoom, they didn't have that opportunity. I think that was, I think it was really rough for people at first. But meetings are opening up now, and I do see a connectivity and community that's coming around, and I don't know. I don't know about you. I didn't get sober to be boring. I wanted to meet people and go out and have fun and do things, and otherwise there wasn't going to be a reason, I thought. So luckily we have that coming back around.
Yeah. This meeting is filled with technical issues because it's very hard to hear you, but we are hearing you, but just barely. But I want to thank both of you for your recovery. It is truly a gift, not only to me as your mother, but to our family and to our whole community. The fact that you're willing to speak out and be actively involved in breaking through stigma, which we still have a long path ahead of us in doing that, because stigma runs so deep, as you both know. I'm going to let the two of you close out with this conversation, but thank you for my Mother's Day and for the life that our family has now with you both back in it, actively in recovery. And I'm going to go downstairs so I can turn off. I'll let you two make the last comments, okay?
Elon, why don't you start it up?
What's that?
Why don't you go ahead and start?
What are our last
I
comments?
feel like I've been talking. I guess he wants us to talk
Okay,
about
well, I
maybe the
was
stigma
there
part.
before. Yeah, you got to go a little bit.
Yeah.
Agree with everything you say. Stigma's the biggest. It's the biggest one to break down. That's why we do these, and I hope some people get a chance to listen to our words. You never know when you're doing it, especially this is one of the new things of COVID. You're not speaking in front of people. That's a whole another interesting dynamic. And when you're not speaking in front of people, you can't read who's hearing you, who's listening, who's really taking it in. If you have to revamp what you're saying to wake somebody up or whatever it might be, or if you're just speaking to this damn computer screen. It's a very important topic. I hope everyone listens to it. I hope even if you're getting on the page where you think you're not stigmatizing this disease, I mean, even people in recovery stigmatize. I think it's like when we challenge our bad behaviors, we got to constantly challenge ourselves and be honest with ourselves to see in what ways we prejudge or we stigmatize it ourselves, and how that contributes to stigmatization in general. Because I mean, that's really what keeps the pragmatic harm reduction strategies, to save lives. That's what keeps us from getting to them in a timely manner. That's what makes us have to fight so long to do things that people know should have happened 20 years before.
Yeah.
I thank you for your time.
I would 100% agree with the stigma part. I know can you guys hear me? Thumbs up. Yeah. I know absolutely, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, but it also is in the reading. It says that, it's okay to say you were here. It's just not okay to say, they were here. I can say I'm here, right? And my thing is like, I want to say that I'm here because I do want to break down stigma. It's the hardest thing to do. And I 100% agree with Elon. We can't stigmatize against each other, right? I used to have a belief, that was different than it is now, and Medicaid assisted treatment, and the idea is we have enough stigma on the outside world, against us to not create stigma amongst us, and the idea is we got to keep people alive long enough and use what we can to keep people, on this around so they can have the chance to recover. Very important that that we can stand out and tell people our stories, and let them know that recovery is possible. You know, I mean, I shot heroin for 20 years and now I haven't shot heroin for 6 years, and I've changed my life, and my life is beautiful today because of that. It's important that people can understand that, and you know, and it's very important that we break the silence if we can. And I'm glad I could be here for you, Mom. Yeah, always here. Now.
Still can't hear you, Mom, but I'm sure you're
I
happy.
think she's saying thank you. She's saying thank you, and then she loves us both. Okay. Well,
Take care. Be safe.
all right. Love you all
Okay.
out there.
Bye.